So poetry of World War One summary kind of thing. So in 1914 to 1918, there were the First World War, which was Germany and the Ottoman Empire against the Allied forces. Um, and the Allied forces were France, England, and Russia and other countries. And what we're going to look at today is the poets from England and one from America as well, I'm pretty sure. Um, because during the time from 1914 to 1918, like entertainment was not really that popular. And so therefore, what you usually did was you read poems, you read books, of course, as well. But poems were a big part of the entertainment, the what you're gonna use your time on, your free time. And so therefore, we have a lot of poems from that time. And we're gonna look at four different poets from that time today. We're gonna look at Rupert Brooke, Alan Seeger, Siegfried Sassoon, and Wilfred Owen. And what's very interesting about these four is you actually got two groups, you could say. You have Alan Seeger and Rupert Brooke, and then you have Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen, that are kind of in each of their corner when you look at their view and their standpoint when trying to describe this war in their poems. So let's take Rupert Brooke to start off with. Rupert Brooke wrote a poem called The Soldier. Um, the Soldier was very known for, if I'm gonna have to, I could read a little part of it right now. Basically, The Soldier is, if I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. Basically, he writes that in that rich earth, a richer dust concealed, a pulse in the eternal mind. And he basically also uses words like laughter, gentleness in hearts at peace under an English heaven. There's a lot of words with the connotation of beauty. Now, Rupert Brooke was very committed, and he actually looked forward to fighting in the war. And when he describes it in his poems, he's usually positive about having to go to war and actually looks forward to it, as I said. But the interesting part in that is that Rupert Brooke never made it to the war. On his way to the war in 1914, he got bit by an insect on his lip, and he contracted a disease that ended up killing him. Now that's going to be relevant and important later on when I'm talking about Wilfred Owen. But I want to use, as I said, there were two corners, and there were Rupert Brooke and then Alan Seeger as well. And Alan Seeger wrote a poem called Rendezvous. I have a rendezvous with death, it's actually called. And now this poem is a bit like The Soldier in it that he's not scared of death, and he doesn't look at death as something bad. He looks at it actually as it's going to happen at some point, and you should rather die in war than anywhere else. And he actually, like Alan Seeger in most of his poems, he sees that fighting in this war is very honorable. Now, honorable is a key word in this poetry about the war, because it's, for these poets, a lot about honor and joy and happiness and, fulfilling your duty, which is actually has a lot to do with the propaganda from the government, and I'm also going to talk about later on. But in this, I have a rendezvous with death. There's a passage where he says, it may be he shall take my hand and lead me into his dark land, and close my eyes and quench my breath. It may be I shall pass him still. I have a rendezvous with death. On some scared slope of battered hill, when spring comes round again this year, and the first meadow flowers appear. And that in this, he's basically saying that he's gonna die. He has a rendezvous with death. Like, there's a grim reaper that's gonna come and take him, and he's gonna die not anywhere but on a scarred slope of battered hill is where his corpse is gonna lay, which basically means that he's gonna die in war, and it's gonna be a good thing for him. He looks forward to it. Now, what I want you to take away from The Soldier and I Have a Rendezvous with Death is that there's not any kind of, you could say, criticism against the war. It's more that we're going to war, we're going to die there, and it's going to be great. It's going to be honorable, and it's going to be what we all were meant to do, basically. And so therefore, I put him in the corner that's this corner. I call it kind of positive or optimism, glad to be fighting in the war kind of thing. And this links to the propaganda, which I'm going to talk to right after I've mentioned this corner over here, which is Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon. Now, the interesting part about these two is that Wilfred Owen, let's start with him, were a great soldier. I think he's called Mad Jack or something like that, where at some point he actually took a German base or something like that, a German machine gun all by himself with a handgun or something like that. He was definitely a very good soldier, and he had his own little legion. He was sergeant or something, I think. But in his poems, and I'm of course going to take the one called Dulce et Decorum Est or something like that, where he actually describes the war really, really, really badly. Now, I want to read to you a passage that I found. Because remember that in this corner over here, you had that it was positive, it was good, fighting in the war is very honorable. And when you die there, there's going to be some part of a field that's forever English, and it's beautiful, and an English heaven. But in the Dulce et Decorum Est, it's super hard to pronounce, there's the passage where Wilfred Owen actually describes dying in the war as super, like, very, very bad, kind of condescending, and there's definitely no honor in dying this way. I'm gonna read you to it right now. It's called, "If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil's sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud, of vile incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, and then dulce et decorum est pro patria mori." All right, so what's really important and really what's fascinating me, and I definitely want to highlight in this, is if you could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, basically if you could see him and his face and his froth-corrupted lungs, like, we have some guy who's dead, and he definitely does not look like an honorable soldier. There's no glory to this at all. Well, basically, if you saw that, you would not tell with such high zest about this war. You would not be as positive as they are over here. Which you can definitely say it to Rupert Brooke. He did not go to the war. And so Wilfred Owen is convinced that if Rupert Brooke saw these things, if Rupert Brooke actually went to war, he would not be so optimistic, or he would not look forward to fighting the war, that's for sure. Alan Seeger did fight in the war, and he did die in some trench. I'm pretty sure he got shot and then he died, bled out in a trench. But we're not sure if he actually then maybe had the time to write enough poems, and he did not have the time to see all these obscene, like, super horrible things to actually alter his way of looking at the war. But Wilfred Owen definitely lived long enough to see that the war is very, very, very horrible. And Wilfred Owen got, I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure if he had shell shock, but definitely a doctor told him that he had. And so he went to some kind of hospital for shell-shocked soldiers. And in that hospital, he met my fourth poet, Siegfried Sassoon. Now, they became friends there in that hospital, and Siegfried Sassoon were a big fan of Wilfred Owen. And it ended up being, I'm pretty sure that Wilfred Owen inspired him to write the statement as I call it, which basically is Siegfried Sassoon's, in my opinion, best work. Now, I'm not sure if you can call it a poem as much as you can just, yeah, I guess it's a poem. But basically what it says, this statement by Siegfried Sassoon, is that the government is just as big as an enemy as the Germans are, and that the government is prolonging the war on purpose for money, I guess. Um, and Siegfried Sassoon survived the war and became very, very politically engaged in excuse me, he became very politically engaged in anti-war politics, and I'm pretty sure he fought everything war related in that political career that he had until his death in 1967. Um, Now, I've mentioned these four poets. We have Rupert Brooke and Alan Sieg in one corner, positive, very. They talk about high zest, basically, about this war, which Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon are saying that if you actually saw the horrors of this war, you would not tell these tales. You would not agree with this. And I said propaganda, and I want to mention that because we've also worked with posters from the war, basically saying enlist now. And there's one I remember that's, what are you going to tell your grandchildren when they grow up if you did not fight in the war, kind of thing. So that going to war was very honorable, and most importantly, if you didn't go to war, do you really have any glory? And well, Siegfried Sassoon is saying that all this is a lie, that there's no glory. Wilfred Owen saying that if you actually go to war, you will regret it. It's super horrible. Don't do it, basically, I'm pretty sure he says. But it's important to say that they're not saying do not fight in the war because the war is bad. Like, I'm pretty sure they agree that we had to have this war and you have to fight for your country and defend it. But they're saying do not go into it thinking that it's this super manly, honorable thing to do and that it's going to be very good for you. It's an awful thing, and it's more of a chore and something that you have to do than something you should be stoked about doing.